So you said that you were a shy kid, and obviously the last thing in some ways that you would expect a shy kid to be doing is to be doing online stand-up comedy in front of live audiences and then taping that's specifically devoted to crowd work. Because I can't actually imagine a situation, maybe if you threw someone on stage and said, like, sing naked, that would be about the equivalent of inducing self-consciousness. So how did you get to the point where, what did you have to do so that your shyness was no longer making you self-conscious on stage? And how is it that you orient yourself towards the audience so you don't become self-conscious when you're, now you'll become self-conscious because we're delving.
No, not at all, not at all.
So I'm curious about how you keep yourself not focusing on whether or not you're being funny, for example, when you're interacting with the audience.
It's purely confidence, whether it's real or fake confidence. I think when I was younger, I did develop a fake confidence.
Yeah, right.
I was bullied a lot in high school. Not like getting shoved into lockers, but to the point where I wasn't in anybody's group. I was class clown. I was the butt of a lot of people's jokes, which didn't hurt. At least I tell myself, but I think that's where you learn to deflect, right? You have two options in a moment when somebody makes a joke at your expense. You can either laugh along and play into it and go with it, or you can be embarrassed and everybody sees you're embarrassed, which is even more embarrassing.
Yeah, right. That just invites further abuse. Yeah.
So I think growing up, I developed this sense of false confidence where I went, hey, if I also make fun of myself and I get in on your guys' joke, it won't hurt, or people can't tell that I'm upset. So people think it doesn't bother me.
Because obviously, so I'm going to challenge your supposition that was false. Well, because the thing about being funny is that if you're false, you're not funny. And if you're not funny and you're being bullied, you're just going to get bullied worse. So you were obviously, it seems like you were able to generate responses that were witty and that were funny.
But purely a defense mechanism, I think. It wasn't for the point of like, oh, I hope I get a good joke off here. I think it was, I have to deflect them saying a mean thing with me saying a funny thing.
Right, but that is, so I would say that's actually a very sophisticated defense, because I mean, one of the things that people do, guys do this particularly in like relatively rough working class jobs, is they'll throw pointed barbs at each other to see, are you the sort of person who gets irritated and flies off the handle and can't be trusted in a crisis? Or are you the sort of person that can roll with a joke and maybe even say something funny? And so I wouldn't say that the ability to do that is false. I would say that's it's more sophisticated form of defense than physical aggression. I mean, physical aggression can be useful, but there isn't a more sophisticated way of parrying like a pointed remark than to turn it into something that's funny and to toss it back.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was a totally subconscious skill set. I had no idea until right now, apparently, what I was even doing. So A, thank you. And B, I think it starts then, and then the longer you do stand up, you realize you're funny. Eventually, you do realize you're funny. Chris Rock talks about this all the time when he talks about when comedians can't tell a joke on stage and it doesn't work. After a certain point, you're funny. You're just not saying your joke correctly to where the audience perceives it the way you want them to perceive it.
Right, so you don't experience moments of global doubt.
Exactly.
It's localized.
Exactly. So I think after a while, I mean, after doing comedy for 12 years and having had shows of uproarious laughter and standing ovations, you're capable of being funny and putting on a good show.
Right.
So I think that confidence is paired with the control of an audience. When you're on stage with a microphone, people are there to watch and listen to you.
They're also hoping you'll be funny, except for the odd troll. So they could be on your side.
Yes, and then once people see how you can handle that kind of power, that you can be funny, that you can shut somebody down, I think people are more apt to take the seat and just go, okay, let me just see what he does.
Right. They're going to give you more of the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, and it's tricky too, responding to a crowd like that too, because you have to be funny. Well, and this is, I suppose, in some ways why you've gotten into trouble. You have to be funny, but you can't be too mean, right? You can't hit a fly with a sledgehammer. Your response has to be proportionate.
Yes.
I mean, you up the ante a little bit. That's my presumption. You up the ante a little bit when someone says something smart, but you don't come out with like the long knives and hack someone to bits.
Of course.
Right, because that'll turn them again. Because first of all, you can actually hurt someone publicly by doing that, which is not good if it's not necessary. And second, you could easily turn the audience against you. Well, this is also, again, why I think it's so unfair that comedians in particular face this kind of absurd cancellation pressure, because the line that a good comic is walking on is so damn thin. You have to be playing with disaster in order to be funny, right? The things you say, this is one of the things I used to really like about Sarah Silverman. Because she would say, you could see it, she'd be listening to someone and some absolutely horrible thought would come into her mind. And then she'd have the guts to lay it out, even though it was like rude and unacceptable beyond belief.
Well, I think comedy is purely down to intent. When people are bullying you, like when high schoolers are making fun of something about you, that's a totally different intent. Even though they are making a joke, their intention is that you're gonna feel a certain kind of way. That is what differentiates it from stand-up comedy. Every single thing I say on stage is said with nothing but the intention to make people laugh. And I understand it's not going to make everybody else laugh. Some people heal totally differently when it comes to certain topics. I get that and I accept that. I'm not for you. But
but getting touchy about that, even if you've been hurt, getting touchy about that, first of all, that's a sign that you still have some real work to do. And second, getting touchy about that and then shielding yourself from any exposure to that is not the way to being cured. Quite the contrary, you know, like if it's better if you've had a traumatic experience in your life not to protect yourself unduly from situations that might bring that back up, but to voluntarily expose yourself to situations where that's likely to be the case. And so it might be understandable in that people have been hurt, but it's counterproductive even with regard to their own recovery.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, partly what comedy does too, it has this psychological function, is that it does provide it's sort of like a horror movie in some ways, you know. It's a weird thing that people will go voluntarily watch a horror movie, because you might ask, like, why would you pay to be scared?
Yeah.
But you're not. You're paying for the experience of the mastery of your fear, right? And you have to, well, and then in comedy, you see the same sort of thing happening, is the comedians are always toying with the forbidden. And the reason for that, in part, the reason the audience participates is because, well, we often have to deal with the forbidden, and often some of the things we forbid aren't things that we should be avoiding or forbidding. So Russell Peters, he's a good example. Peters, when he does his huge stadium shows, it's so interesting to watch them because he tells racist jokes nonstop, and you can feel that there's a palpable demand in the audience from the ethnic group that he hasn't yet skewered to be skewered, so that they can show that they can take a joke, that they're in on the joke, right? And so the comedians, they have that function of putting forward, what would you say, unpalatable truths, right? In a place where everyone's there to do that voluntarily. That's part of the game. How far can we push things? And then to get all bitchy about that and to try to cancel someone in consequence. I saw this one guy on YouTube who's complaining about you. You know, he said, first of all, maybe you'll recognize him. He said that, you know, you built your career as an ally of women. That was basically his point. Now that you've betrayed them with your jokes about domestic abuse. And so he was playing this, you know, I'm the friend of women sort of game.
Yeah.
But he's violating that contract too, which is that everybody's there in a comedy club to play with disaster. And you know, you're essentially supposed to go along with that.
I just don't understand how the environment isn't taken into consideration. Like the environment is the context. Think of comedy like a store, like a restaurant front, right? You go in there, the food's not for you, you can leave. You didn't have to stop in here. Comedy is such a niche field. I wouldn't consider stand-up comedy a mainstream art form. I wouldn't. It's not film, it's not television, it's not music, it's not as globally celebrated in every household, you know? So I think, it just blows my mind that people can't just let it be. If it's not for you, it's not for you.
Well, I see what's happening, I think. Like even this guy that criticized you in the manner that I just described, I found what he had to say, and him for that matter, contemptible. I thought it was pathetic.